Welcome back to another episode of The Sweet Spot. This is John Sherman from the Four Foundations of Golf. And as always, I'm joined by.
Adam from Adam in Golf.
So today we have Twitter superstar Mike Kim. He also plays golf for a living too. He's joining us. I think it's your third time on The Sweet Spot. He's had a pretty massive year. We're excited to hear about it. He also did an awesome thread on Twitter that we're going to get into. Your 31 quick tips on improving your game for finishing 31st in the FedEx. We'll talk about that too. But yeah, welcome back, Mike. Thanks for taking time to
You're
talk to us.
welcome.
I know your schedule is going to be busy now.
Yeah, excited to be back again, and can't wait to get into the year and try and help your listeners hopefully get a little bit better at golf.
We'll see.
Well, at least
What
maybe
happened?
not worse.
Well, we're not making anyone worse. So we last spoke to you, I think it was June of 2024. So you have like a pretty interesting story in terms of like top tier amateur player, got out on tour, you won in 2018, and then you lost your card for years. You made it back, and now you've just had a massive jump from 24 to 25. So, yeah, walk us through what happened. Like I could see it in the stats, but you just had an incredible start to the year. You got really hot. So what changed?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have asked me this, and I wish I could point to like a certain flash in the pan moment. But really, a lot of the work that my coach Sean Foley and I have been doing, it felt like we were kind of building into something. Um, I think it really started to click a bit more at the end of the fall last year. Um, I think I was maybe like 130th heading into Vegas, which sadly that tournament's not there anymore. So I needed a good fall to kind of clinch my card. I didn't play Napa well, and it started at Utah. Felt like I was hitting I felt comfortable with my swing, but the golf ball kind of kept going left and left. And Sean, who usually leaves by Thursday afternoon, there was like a hurricane in Florida, so he decided to stay one more day. Um, and we both felt like our swing was in a pretty good spot, but it was the ball would keep missing left, so we moved my ball position back a little bit that Thursday afternoon. Played much better Friday, and the week after was Vegas, and I shot a 63, 64, maybe 62, something like that on the final round on Sunday to finish fifth, which was a massive help boost and kind of gave me a cushion for the fall. And then starting from there, I had a good run of finishes after that. And so we just kind of kept it going, just mainly paid attention to the ball position and some other stuff, just kept building. And, it all kind of came together at Waste Management, where I finished second this year. Had a had a great 1 hour lesson with Joe Mayo that week, which helped. So it was all these kind of culmination of all these smaller moments, I feel like, kind of led to a great year.
When I look at strokes gain doesn't tell us everything, obviously, but it looks like you've been a good iron player the last few years, but mainly your driver and around the green was kind of the explanation of where the it's so crazy. Like when you think about like, what does it take to become like the 100th best player on tour to the 30th best player? And it's like 0.3 or 0.4. It sounds ridiculous. Like, oh yeah, I can get a quarter of a stroke, but like that change is so massive. And I remember watching you at Waste Management when you were in contention, and that's a uncomfortable golf course off the tee. Would you agree with that? Like it's not, not the easiest off the tee. It's desert golf. It was firm.
I don't particularly love desert golf. That is for sure. But
Why
for
not?
whatever reason,
Yeah, why not?
well, I prefer the vast playability of just grass.
So you find it scary then? Because I've just moved to Vegas in the last 5 years, so I'm playing all desert golf, and yeah, it's weird. It's if your ball's not in the fairway, it's dead basically. So you find the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. No, I mean, like, the 11th hole there, it's this big dogleg right, water left, desert on the right, and it's weird. There are certain courses where I feel a bit more comfortable over the tee shots. And actually that course is one of them. I feel good about that golf course. Vegas actually, there's a lot of trouble there, but you can get away with hitting a lot of three woods. And I feel like I'm pretty good with a three wood in my hand.
You can, yeah.
So if it's firm, you can get away with it. So, just some of those courses, sued fit me well.
So what was I remember watching that tournament, you were just like kind of ripping your tight. You're one of the few players who hits a tight draw with the driver. Pretty damn straight, 180-mile-per-hour ball speed. Looks like you gained almost, I'm looking at data golf, which is a little different than the PGA Tour, but almost gained a full stroke that week off the tee. Talk about like ball position and how you got there, because you mentioned earlier you were worried about a left miss for a draw player is kind of uncomfortable. So kind of what was like the road that led to that week where you just had this, and I can't stress, like someone saying finishing second in a signature event like makes your whole year. So this was a massive like transformation for you.
Yeah, so actually when I'm missing it, when I'm overdrawing it left, I feel much more comfortable with that than the big misses to the right. And that's why, when Sean and I were missing a little to the left, we didn't feel like there was a massive change that we needed to make. Usually off the tee, if it's like starting right and then going even further right, that's when I know like my swing is just in a complete mess and I've got no chance. Yeah, but I just actually that week I was even with the ball position, I thought I was missing it a little too far left, and so I changed my driver setting. I tried a new one on Wednesday, felt pretty good on the range, and so I played with it Thursday and drove it like so, hit a couple good ones like down, 7, 8, 9 or something like that, and I was like, okay, I think it's okay. And then Friday afternoon, I was warming up and my driver was just going way right. What we had done, we had changed with the driver setting. It was just opened up the club face just a little bit,
Mhm.
and just warming up, just was going all over the place. And I was like, this is not going to work. So um, and I don't have a ton of time by the time I'm hitting drivers during my warm up. I have probably like 15 minutes left. And so I'm like
Yikes.
banging these drivers, and it's just like I can't play with this in desert golf. And so I changed back to what I had before, hit hit one or two, and I was like, I think that's at least okay, and teed off. I remember second hole, and it's like a pretty tricky tee shot on the second hole. There's bunkers right and desert left, and the first hole is it's not a driver hole. It's like a 7 wood or something. So didn't worry about that. So I'm like, all right, like I I just remember like standing up there. I'm trying to make the best swing I can, but I'm not sure where this golf ball is going to go.
Obviously on your way to almost winning the golf tournament.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly where I hit it, but I must have been a half decent spot. So, and then I remember hit a good one on three, which is kind of a narrowish par five. You obviously want to kind of hit the fairway to reach the green too, and I hit a good one there. So that kind of calmed me down. And then I actually played one of the better rounds of the year there. That second round, again, I forget exactly what I shot, but I remember I almost made a hole in one on 16. I'm pretty sure I made birdie on 17. And shot 64, 65, maybe something along those lines.
Isn't that crazy though? We've talked about this before, like how warm-ups sometimes they're not a great predictor. Isn't that like, I mean, so that started, would you agree this was the best stretch of golf of your career? You had tied second, tied 13th, tied sixth at the Cognizant, and then fourth at another signature event, Arnold Palmer. Like you just went on an absolute tear, and it started with you on the range having no idea where your driver was going.
Yeah, that's definitely like, I've had stretches obviously as a pro golfer where, you know, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I felt good about my game and I played well. But, like that is like almost a couple month long stretch. That's kind of where I where you think, you can get hot for a couple weeks, but to do that for that
Yeah,
long of
5
a
tournaments,
stretch,
it's a big deal.
yeah, was a pretty big deal to me.
And that kind of I don't think a lot of people also realize this about tour players is that all it takes is like I mean, to secure your card, which is the thing you care about the most, obviously, in your position, like, it really only takes, like, 3 or 4 great weeks. It's like a disproportionate if you get a few top 5s, like, you sit pretty and you just went on a tear there. So at that point, does your mindset shift? I'm sure when you started the year, the goal is obviously to keep your card, but then you were, like, 8th in the FedEx. Like, what like, talk to me about, like, did your identity change? Like, "Oh, man, now I can do greater things." Like, what were you thinking at the end of that?
I remember, well, like going back on your, like keeping your car, like when you're playing well, like, you know, you need like 400 odd points to, I think, like to keep your card. And when you're playing well, you're like 400.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can
that's
do
nothing.
that in like
Yeah.
in like a month if I playing well. And then when you're like on the outside looking in, you're like, I need like 60 more points. You're like, how in the world am I gonna ever get 60 points kind of thing? Uh, but after um I remember after waste management, fairly week after was the Genesis, which is the signature event, I think. And I had a pretty solid week there. Um, and, I had a really good chance of winning the Cognizant. But then, I think Bay Hill kind of capped it all off. I finished fourth there. And at that point, I think when you first start out the year trying to get into as many signature events as possible, that's kind of the number one goal. And the waste management kind of helped me get into like the swing five. But then there's also kind of the bigger Aon 10 for the year. And after Bay Hill, felt like I had a really good shot of being in all the signature events. And just kind of wanted to build upon that, and obviously top 50 is a massive goal to that to end of the year. But I do think after Bay Hill, I started kind of thinking like, all right, like this is the best start I've had in my career, and I think from that point, a tour championship kind of became the number one goal. But like, I would hope that like my identity as a person or even a golfer doesn't change too much based on a few good tournaments.
Yeah. So, yeah, walk us through the rest of the year. I mean, I guess the question I have for you is it's one of those weird things. Like, if I went to you at the beginning of the year and I was like, you're going to finish first on the FedEx Cup,
I mean,
which,
honestly, if you told me like, hey, you're gonna finish 48th, but you're in the signature, I probably would have signed up right there at the beginning of the year. As far as the year goes, I think there are certain moments that I'll remember for that I remember. One's obviously waste management, Bay Hill. Houston is obviously a big one because me and or Ben Griffin and I were fighting for kind of the last spot for the top 50 OWGR to get into the Masters. And that was such a tight race coming down that no one really could figure out until the tournament ended of who was going in. I played pretty well at the Masters, uh, top 30, I think.
yeah, you finished 27th at the Masters. And that was your second Masters.
Yeah, second Masters. So that was obviously a cool moment. Then I hit kind of a bad stretch where I was dealing with a back injury and some other things, and so like my felt like my golf stalled a little bit there, and then really didn't pick back up until had a decent week at Colonial, and then really didn't really have like that high of a finish until BMW.
Yeah. So BMW, obviously, you needed to play very well to get into Tour Championship. You finished 10th, which is obviously nothing to sneeze at. Someone's got to finish 31st, and it was you. And I know a lot the PGA Tour has made these arbitrary lines in the sand, top 50 gets signature, top 30, I think 2-year exemption and into majors and all that stuff. So apologies if it was a difficult moment, but it's just such a crazy journey where you were fighting for your card in the fall, and then you are fighting to get into the tour championships. What was like your reflection on when it ended? I'm sure there was some like heartbreak there and then some positive things as well.
Yeah, just it was a weird mix of emotion for sure. I mean, the best I'd ever been in the FedEx was like 70 something, or maybe not even uh, something. Regardless, it's the best FedEx Cup year or best year I've had. Um, you know, I I was walking down 18, feeling like I tried to play the tournament as if like kept telling myself kept not only telling myself, but kind of trying to envision, me going to East Lake and all that, and trying to kind of will myself to believe that I was gonna get there, and I felt good about my game the entire week. Obviously, I was hitting it great, even walking down, on down the last few holes. I felt like I was in control. Hit a nice tee shot on 18, and I had uh, checked the leaderboard and the projections on 18T just to see if I should hit driver or not, and felt like I was in at that time. I knew it was like minuscule difference between Akshay and I. So, but I knew I was inside at that moment, so I hit 3 wood. And as we're walking up, I realized Victor and I were tied, and so if Victor makes birdie, I'm gonna probably have to make birdie as well to kind of guarantee myself. I remember thinking like, okay, par is probably good, but I know birdie's in for sure. So I see Victor, who went first from the fairway. You can't see exactly where the ball ends up from the fairway, but you can have an idea based on the crowd. So he gets a pretty good cheer. So I'm like, man, that's looked real close. It's probably pretty good. And so I took that aim at the flag. And the wind was like pretty tricky that entire day. It was swirling all over, and whether it helped a bit more than I thought, or I just had a little bit more adrenaline going, it just went like 5, 6 yards further than I thought. I made a pretty good swing at it. And it's like greens were so fast on Sunday, and I have like this 25-footer downhill that I feel like I need to make, but I also like, par might still be good enough. So it's just like
Uh,
trying to balance that. Um, you know, Played like way too high of a line and kind of had a 2.5, 3-footer coming back. And I can still see Victor is lining his putt up, and, you know, I'm just watching him hit the putt, and it just goes in dead center. I'm like, I think that's it. And I make my 3-footer. If Ricky had made bogey on 18, that would have pushed me back in, but he makes par. Harry chips in on 17, so that basically ended that. And then Ludwig, like out of nowhere, double finished like bogey double. If he had finished one worse, I would have been in. But
it's like
at
it's such a crazy like set of circumstances like for
yeah,
your life.
but at that point, I was already at the airport.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of,
What are you gonna do?
so what
If
am
you
I gonna
had to
do?
do it over again, if you got into that situation again, would you look at the leaderboard and like choose 3 wood or driver, or would you just been like, you know what, I'm sticking to the plan, like I'm gonna try to play the whole
I was plenty happy with the tee shot. I don't think I would hit driver. It's a pretty narrow fairway there if you're trying to
Mhm.
kind of feed driver in there. My iron game had been really good the entire week. So
Yeah, I
the
mean
only
your iron game was on, you gained almost 2.5 strokes, it's saying, which is massive on Data
yeah,
Golf.
like the only really like big mistake I made was on I'm gonna say 14. I drove it into the fairway bunker there, hit a okay bunker shot. The pin was on the left, so I thought I should miss on the right. So if anything, and I just pushed a little bit and it got plugged in the bunker. So that kind of made bogey there. I mean, I can look back on 17, but like it's a back right pin. You can't be sure. Win was it was one of those where like the flags up on the grandstands are showing like a little, mostly off the right, and maybe like a smidge of help, but then like on the tee box, I feel like a smidge of in, and I was having a hard time committing to the golf shot, but I made as good of a swing as I could have really hoped for and missed it just long left. Caught a pretty bad lie, honestly. And I knew the chip was going to be fast, but I actually hit a half decent chip and it just rolled out, 10 feet. Hit a pretty solid putt from the first cut. Like I executed all those shots like the way I wanted to. So I don't really know, like, there's not a ton of regret of like how I played those last few holes. Help doesn't sting as bad when it's like that. Like if I had just completely thrown it away and just three putted 18, I think it would have hurt a lot. But
Yeah.
I
And
was
also there was so much out of your control with obviously like what Victor was doing and all the other people. So it's just a wild scenario mentally. It's a lot to deal with, obviously.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like I was really for the most part happy with the way how I felt over it, and the swings I made and how I felt executing those shots. Um, still stings. A bunch of members at the golf course I'm a member at, uh, keeps telling me like, you did great, and they always ask me like, did you know playing with Victor on 18? I was like, yeah, I knew. So kind of thinking about that. But at the end of the day, it was a great season, and I only have to improve by one the next year to make it an even better one. So
No, I mean, it's an incredible jump. It's also just a very cool story to watch the trajectory of your career and someone who kind of fell out of the PGA Tour for years, and then fighting your way back to this level is incredible. We've had Joe Mayo on the show. We'd love to have him back on again, and obviously he's been like a lightning rod for a lot of things for many years, but more so with the chipping lately. So tell us about your lesson with Joe and how it impacted your season.
yeah, so I've always been a decent chipper of the ball, but never top of the PJ Tour. I felt like I was always kind of around average, which it's like these are the best players in the world, so I never felt
I
like
mean,
my
yeah,
short
I'm sure
game was
watching you
terrible.
chip yeah, I'm sure watching you chip, everyone be like, "Oh, man, that guy's freaking good."
Yeah, but then No Laying Up did had an episode with Joe Mayo as a guest, and it was like I hadn't really known about like the whole like steep, shallow, like and all that. Uh, and so I was like, I was like, Victor and I are in the same agencies through, we have we we don't have the same agent, but through the agency I got Joe Mayo's phone number. I was like, hey, like Joe, if you're available, I'd love to, take a chipping lesson, and found out, a couple weeks later that he'd be at Waste Management. So we found a time on Tuesday afternoon to work. We worked on it for an hour, and it's not like the most complicated concept. I mean, you're just trying to chip a ball 10 yards. It's not rocket science for the most part, but liked what it was, what he had to say. It also helped that it's overseed rye. So, if the first golf course that we were chipping on was like super grainy Bermuda, like at like Wyndham, I think it would have been a much kind of trickier thing to like really fully commit to, but felt pretty good, and I chipped it really well. Obviously had a really nice week that week, and I don't remember exactly, but I gained strokes plenty around the green. So,
What did you
kind of,
change? Do you remember specifically what you
yeah,
worked
we
on?
changed, because of my swing, I'm generally pretty like club. I like the club going inside on a pretty shallow path. But with Joe, I definitely stood way closer to the ball. and just and I had a lot of body turn on my chipping, but in general, just went from a pretty shallow path to it's not like crazy steep by any means. I think I tried it on TrackMan because I was curious, and I think it's like 6 or 7 down, which isn't crazy steep.
Yeah.
I He tells me Victor's at like 12 or whatever, but I refuse to believe. I Until I see it on the screen myself, I will not believe because I can't I can't physically even get to 12 or 14 if if I'm just on the range just trying to make it steep, which is crazy. But yeah, just in general, just made it super steep, mainly with the setup and just kind of we weren't like changing. I wasn't necessarily changing like the whole swing feel of it. I guess I was a little bit, but it was mostly setup based and kind of how the club reacts to that setup and how I react to that setup. I guess is the best way I would explain it. But
Yeah, six
yeah,
is
just
it's pretty shallow. That was before the changes, or that was
no,
after?
I was less before.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that's super
I must
shallow.
have been probably like 3 or 4 before. I don't remember exactly what I was before. But I think, yeah, I think I tried it after the lesson. I think I was at like 6 or 7 ish. Um, I'm not exactly sure where I'm at now, but I assume I'm about there. Um,
Yeah.
so
We're talking about angle of attack for listeners.
angle of
Sorry,
attack,
I
yes,
didn't
yes, sorry.
clarify that. Yeah, 6 degree down with a sand wedge chip is kind of shallow.
Yeah, so those are mostly the changes we made, and yeah, it's been really nice.
Yeah, it
Yeah, I
looks like
mean,
your
looking at
strokes
your
gained around the
yeah,
green improved as a result of
yeah,
it.
Yeah, there was a clear yeah, if you look on Data Golf, like literally starting that week, it kind of took off and you continued the rest of the year even better. So, man, that's nice. I wish it's like, yeah, well, that's the hard thing about players at your level. When you get something different that's, not your normal pattern, and then you've got to put it into play. Like, do you feel it was far easier because it was a chip shot versus a full swing concept?
yeah, yeah. Like I said, the fact that it was rye was super helpful. I felt like the line lies were super clean, and I've always felt like I have good touch. I was just struggling with contact a little bit, and obviously being a bit steeper definitely helped with that. And it really helped in the next few weeks when like at Torrey Pines at Genesis or at Bay Hill or Arnold Palmer when the rough was really thick, and in the rough you just can't get away with it being shallow at all there. And I felt like I was chipping it a lot better after that. Bermuda, I just don't know if I'll ever like figure it out as well as rye, but that's probably everyone, not just me. So
Except the people who grew up in Florida. All right, we've got your mega thread here, which is filled with interesting things. Adam, do you want to? I'm going to guess the one that Adam wants to tackle first. You go, Adam.
Oh no, I just got them in order here. I like the mental one. So, even the first one, learning to play in chaos as opposed to trying to find peace when it isn't available. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, it's I think like for me, if I'm standing on the first tee at Augusta, and that's one of like the most intimidating golf shots I'll ever hit in my life because it's not an easy tee shot. Like, there's a lot
It's a
of
hard
holes.
hole. Yeah.
There's a lot of tee shots where you can get away with a lot at Augusta. Like 3, for example, no matter what club you hit, like there's plenty of room there to miss it on. Like 9 for the most part is pretty wide. 10 actually is like one of the widest fairways. You just need to get the ball to curve anyway. But 1, if it's into the wind at all, um, it's you have to hit driver. You can't get away with hitting 3 if it's into the wind. Obviously the bunker right, trees left, and it's like the first hole of the Masters, so you're just on edge.
How nervous were you, like, on a scale of, like, what's your normal out of 10, what's, like, your normal nervousness level, like, teeing up at a PGA tournament? Like a
Well,
3?
it's no, it's I would say it's higher than that. I would
6?
say I would say these days it honestly depends on the first tee shot a lot of times. Like waste management first tee shot, it's probably like a 3 or 4. If it's like a tougher tee shot first hole, say like Vedanta, Mexico. It's actually like the widest fairway on the PGA Tour, but there's 2 really tough tee shots, and that's 1 and 10. So if I'm there, it's probably like a 6, maybe a 7. At Augusta, it's like, or
12.
in years past when I was really struggling with my game, it was at like a 9.5, just on any tee shot involving driver. At Augusta, it's like a full 9 at least, I would say, that first tee shot.
Are your hands shaking? Be honest.
Maybe. I don't it's not like I'm like trying to put the ball on the tee and like I can barely
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah. They're like
it's not like that, but like
just a slight
like
tremor.
maybe but like my heart's beating, like it's like as if I'm in contention playing the last few holes, trying to, my mind's racing like crazy. And I remember I was actually more nervous I played with Phil and DJ in a practice round on Tuesday, or no, maybe I think it was Wednesday. And teeing off that, I was just as nervous, if not more nervous, doing that as on Thursday, which was nice actually. I could get an idea of what my body was doing when I was getting that nervous on that week, and okay, I knew some of like the swing thoughts I would want. I think would that worked to kind of help that off, but
What
yeah,
are they?
like
What are your swing thoughts when you're nervous? Or
it's
like, what
generally a
patterns
lot
tend to
of
happen?
yeah, it's generally a lot of tempo stuff. I think that week I was just trying to get it a little bit more open on the backswing. It's usually all Sean and I always talk, we like to think golf as at least the golf swing as a backswing game. And I don't generally swing thoughts that are too complicated or in the transition or follow through don't stick, at least for me. So it's mostly 1 or 2 swing thoughts, usually having a nice smooth backswing is like a big thing. It's always been a thing for me, and I have a tendency to try and get to my left side a little too quick. Staying back on it is usually 2 of like kind of my favorites, or 2 of the ones that I use the most. But yeah, like when I'm on that tee and then like the nerves are at a 9, and my mind is, full like fight or flight, like it's, you know, like you could say like, oh, don't think about it, or just, have full confidence. And it's just like, man, like it's just like not that simple when you're doing that. And my mental coach and his big thing is like, if you're trying to generate a certain type of feeling or trying to conjure up any type of assuredness or confidence, like those really don't last, or those are just hard to play with, or it's just not sustainable. So you know accepting, hopefully you go through your routine, you commit to the shot, and if you have high acceptance of like, okay, like I might hit it way left into the woods, or whatever, you'll be okay. Like, I'm not going to whiff, hopefully I'm not going to whiff the golf ball as a top 50 in the world tour pro.
What's the worst shot you ever hit as a professional?
My
I
gosh,
don't. Maybe I
I've hit
shouldn't
so
even bring
many.
this
You're
up.
gonna
I'll
go
get
back
some
to the
I've,
dark
demons to
days.
oh,
rip
there's
open some scars, locked away, hidden, buried.
nah. I mean, I don't have too much problem talking about it. There's been a lot. In particular, St. Simon's usually brings. I remember on the plantation course, I hit it like I was so afraid of hitting it right. I would once in a blue moon like hit it way left. And there was one time I hit like a tree that was like 40 yards off the tee that no pro you would ever think, like no pro would ever hit that tree. I think that was one of them. Let's see. I think at Vegas on like the third hole, hit it like so far right. It was like in the desert. Yeah, there's plenty. I mean, I could Which
Well,
golf
what do
course
you
you want to know?
yeah, well, let me ask you this, like, compared to those years, so those are, you look at the stats, your world ranking, all that stuff, like two completely different golfers. But you're telling us, which I think it's nice you're being honest, that you're still quite nervous when you play professional golf, even though this year you've achieved a lot. Would you say that after that run you had, did it quell any of those nerves? Or just something you just, as you said, you're going to have to like embrace the chaos and you're going to deal with some level of anxiety and discomfort because what you do for a living is very difficult and there's a lot of pressure on you. And unfortunately, golfers who don't play for a living feel that same discomfort and anxiety at times because they're worried about playing partners and all that other stuff. So it's interesting to hear that, you're still fairly nervous when you play golf despite everything you've achieved recently.
Well, for sure. Because, I kind of label it as scar tissue, like because I have
Yeah.
that scar tissue and because I've had such a prolonged downward spiral there,
Uh-huh.
my mind is always like, have that thought of like, what if I go back? What if, I hit some of those squirrely shots? Like, will I be able to come back the way I did in, a few years back? What if those shots come back? Those things are always with me, no matter who I or where I'm playing. And yeah, at a certain point, it's not about like going back to kind of like playing it, trying to play better under chaos. Like it's not trying to like not it's not about not trying to think about those things.
Yeah.
It's
Just
like it's
you're letting
about
it kind
like,
of flow through.
yeah, it's just like the more like, let's say like I'm over a shot and like, all right, I'm gonna be super confident over this and I'm gonna do it. And this is maybe how I would imagine how Rory McIlroy feels over a golf ball when he's driving it well. Like, I'm gonna try and feel that, and I step over it. And even though the golf swing is short, it's plenty of time for your mind to go into different, bad spaces or bad thoughts to come into your mind. And right before I take it back, all that like feeling that I was trying to make up kind of go by the wayside. And, it's like, what if my ball does, X? And it's like, what if my ball does slices OB right or snap hooks it into the water? And that difference of feeling of like how I want to feel, of like how might imagine Rory would feel like, and the that big of a gap between how confident I feel like I should feel, but how I actually feel. If it's such a big gap, it's like the oh no, like while I'm swinging a golf club, that's definitely not a good case. Where it's more like, if you're a bit more like, yeah, like I know I'm nervous. I know my mind's going 1,000 miles per hour. I know that I might hit a god awful golf shot here standing on the first tee at Augusta, a place that I've dreamed about coming back for a really long time. Like, yeah, I might hit a bad shot. You know, whatever happens, I'm going to have to accept and move on. But I'm still going to try and hit the shot that I've committed myself that I want to pursue. I want to, whatever shot I drew up, a little draw off the right bunker, like I'm going to still try and hit that shot and not like protective of like, I really don't want to see this ball going to the left tree. So I try to like guide it right. And, afterwards, like because it didn't go left, you're like, oh, like I'm okay. Like, no, like I'm still going to try and hit the shot that I'm trying to pursue. And wherever the ball goes, I'll deal with it then. But it's like a bit of a shift out. Did I turn it off? No,
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 you're
it's
good.
a
go
bit of
on.
a shift, I would say,
Do you
in
feel like
that.
at your level that most of the mistakes is it just a game of mental games with yourself at
I
your
mean,
level?
it's
Would you
it's
feel?
like all things, it's like a little bit of both. Where like I can't imagine it's all mental because there are times where like this is one thing, my mental coach is like, you've hit plenty of shots when your mind is going all over the place. You've hit plenty of shots that go perfectly straight. And there are times when I'm so confident over the ball and I still hit a bad one. So it's always a balance, and there are times like with the ball position, like that's a real like mechanical thing that really helped me drive it much better. So it's always a balance. Um, if you're in a great state of mind, obviously that improves your chances at hitting a good shot. But you guys all know like there's no guarantee that my golf balls is going to go where I want. So it's if you're don't try to find 100% or don't try to find certainty in a game that's impossible to find certainty in.
Yeah, I always like hearing this because, again, I think most people watch you guys on TV and, you play with sunglasses on. That was actually a question from Twitter.
Yeah, so
So I do too, actually. I'm a sunglass guy. I literally can't play golf without
yeah, I couldn't.
sunglasses on. I just literally can't see. I
I
can't
can't
see.
see. It's
Right?
sometimes
Is
like
that,
in
what is
Yeah,
that? Like, I can't see even if it's cloudy out. I cannot see without
yeah, I
sunglasses
got
on.
very
no.
sensitive eyes as well. Most tour players don't wear sunglasses, right?
No,
I
most of
don't
them
know
don't. I
how
have
they
no
do
idea
it.
how they do it.
I've never
It's
even
How do
thought
they do
about
it?
it
crazy to
really.
me.
Right? Okay. All
It's
right. I'm glad we're
crazy.
on the same
Like
page there.
especially like if you're in the
It's so
bunker and
bright.
it's like
Yeah.
super white sand, like Augusta has super white sand. Even with sunglasses, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like pretty
Yeah. It's like
bright. Like
glaring at you.
I don't know how people do it.
I think that all the time when I'm watching on TV. I'm like, these guys must get blinded. So my point was, is like, you're wearing sunglasses, so no one can really like see your facial expressions as much. You kind of look like stone cold out there if you're wearing sunglasses more. That's not why I wear them, but I think it's an effect. You don't necessarily see someone's facial expressions much, but it is interesting to know that. Yeah, like you're standing over a 5-foot putt trying to make a cut or at the end of the tournament and you're at some point you're gonna be like, man, don't miss this. This is a big one. You can't miss this. You're not
Yeah, like
entirely confident over it.
we are supposed to be not supposed to. We are like the best in the world at playing golf. It's like why wouldn't you be super confident over
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
golf shot? Like
Exactly.
I've
Like you're really
trained
good.
I've spent the last 20 odd years of my life trying to prepare for these moments. But at the same time, like we from a kid, like we were praised when we played well. We were,
Yeah.
not praised when we played bad. So without, we're not trying to, but we identify ourselves with our scores way more than the average Joe as well. So you know, like, yeah, it's a game, but it's like it is more than just a game to us. And the best guys are obviously very well rewarded financially, but at the same time, like, this is our jobs, this is our livelihoods. And, if this is like your first year on tour and you've been a journeyman guy, like it's not a 5-footer to make the cut isn't just like it's just there's so much meaning behind that for us as pros too. So it's kind of crazy how the brain works sometimes.
It's
Is
also,
it
we're playing a game of tightrope walking effectively. Such a small change can mean a disaster. You can close the face 1 degree, means you miss that 3, 4 footer, 5 footer, maybe a little bit more than that, but a small change can make a huge difference. I mean, we were looking at your strokes gained before this, and this year you've gained point 0.4 of a shot. So, and that's been the difference for you between this year and last year. Point 0.4 shot sounds like nothing, but it's huge at your level. Every single shot counts so much. So you must be
Yeah, I
constantly on
mean,
edge. I don't envy you.
I missed the 30th by I don't know the exact number, but like maybe like 10 or 12 points, like in a full year. That's such small margins.
Yeah.
do you think is it one of your goals or even motivations to you talked about your scar tissue and it's going to be with every golfer has scar tissue and yours is way more severe because again this is your livelihood and part of it's your identity. Do you feel like there's a road you could potentially go down where if you say like I am going to keep my like I feel pretty confident I'm going to be this guy who shows up every year and gets his card, like do you feel like you can start getting to a place where you do step up to the first tee of Augusta or another tournament and you're like, yeah, I'm feeling more comfortable here. Like it's not a 6 or 7 anymore. I'm down to a 3 or 4. Like, do you feel like you could work towards that? Is that a reasonable expectation for you, or you're just not sure?
No, like I think, you know, It's gotten way down since on a if you're just kind of going from that
Yeah,
numerical
we're using
scale.
that 10 scale.
Yeah, I mean, I would for for maybe for a lot longer than for a long time, I was near that 7, 8, like, constantly, and now, it's way less now, and, part of that is the stuff I've been working on mentally with some of the stuff, we talked about, and also it's a bit of, like, accepting, like, yeah, you know what, like, I might hit the squirrely shot, and I might hit it bad, but, that's going to happen, like, we talked about like 1 degree is the difference. Like it's golf. Like I might hit that shot, and like yeah, I might go through another bad stretch of bad golf where with the tee ball with my driver, I'm hitting it all over the place again. But at the end, it's a bit of me accepting that that's a possibility, and it's also like what, like I feel like I have a much better understanding of how I should be swinging the golf swing. I feel like my coach John Foley has a really good handle on how I should be swinging it. Like, I have all these different tools to where I don't think I'm going to take that long to
Well, you have
come
a
back
road
from.
back. Yeah, you have a road back,
Right.
obviously, to get back to. I mean, that's high level golf for anyone. Like you get out of
Yeah.
whack and you're like, no, I have a framework here of what I know works for me, and it gets out of whack sometimes. But I mean, that's wonderful to hear. It must like make you feel confident internally versus,
Yeah.
the other
And,
years.
and there are times where I'm still like on edge, and, it's important for me to like not freak out that I'm on edge, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to not be okay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Get on
Exactly.
edge about
Exactly.
being on edge.
Like I said, like at Waste Management, after on Friday, after I changed my setting with 10 minutes to go, like I was definitely on edge on the second
Yeah.
tee on the tee shot on two, but it ended up being one of my best rounds of the year, which kind of set up the entire year for me. So we talk about like a feeling doesn't have a has correlation to how you're going to hit your shot, but it doesn't mean you have to feel a certain way to hit a good golf shot. Um, it's being
Do
okay.
we
We've been
think
talking about this topic a lot. I'm
it's come
finding
up
it's
a lot lately?
for
Yeah.
me, it's almost turned into an inverse correlation. Like yeah, it's crazy. The more
Adam thinks
confident I am,
his
the worse I
demons.
hit
Yeah.
a shot. So I almost have to feel a little bit on edge to play good. Obviously, I can't feel like the world's going to collapse if I hit a bad shot, but I need a certain level of edge to make me
No, I
perform
think
well.
studies have shown that in order to get into that flow state, you need some nerves, and you need like that tick of nerves and a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of adrenaline to get yourself into the flow states.
What a great game this is, huh?
Sure.
Yeah. So if I is there a sense of I'm sure there's a sense of relief, like what's transpired over the last like 2 or 3 years, like that you're like, wow, like the card's good. I mean, let's face it, you've made a lot of money. I'm sure that is very comforting for your career. Any golfer I talk to, I've spent time with plenty of mini tour players, and money comes up a lot. It's very difficult to play this game professionally if you don't have access to capital and a secure job. So, like, is there like a kind of more of a little bit of freedom and relief there that you feel like you can kind of let go a little bit?
You know, the relief feeling of it all was definitely like when I got my tour card back.
Hmm.
And even like to be honest, like the biggest relief of my entire career, well, one was when I won the John Deere. That was like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
crazy like relief off my back. But maybe just as big was, you know, we might have talked about this last couple times I was on your guys' show, where I was playing a Corn Ferry Tour event in Panama, and the first round, this is 2022, I would say, I think. and I hit the ball like fantastic. And it was the first time that I hit the ball well. My swing felt good the entire day. And this is maybe, 4 months after I started working with Sean, like knowing that that wasn't faked. Like I wasn't like saving it for the ball to go straight. And, you know, like the relief I felt after that round was like knowing I'm on the right path. Like that was a massive relief. But like, like this year, I think it's been more of like just, you know, be just feeling satisfied more than anything. Relief, I wouldn't say relief is the exact word, but obviously, it's a lot of good stuff obviously came from this year.
Yeah. Do you think, here's another brain twisting question. Do you think you'd be where you are now had you not connected with Sean? Like, do you think that that match between your swing and what you felt about it and finding the right coach was, I'm not saying it's the only thing, obviously, like your talent, all of your hard work for your life, but finding that right connection and that trust, sounds like that was the thing that helped you kind of get back on the path. Like, do you often wonder, you think to yourself, well, what if I didn't connect with them, what would have happened?
To answer your question, I truly don't think I would have found a different guy at the end of
Yeah.
it, but I truly don't think I for sure wouldn't have gotten my card back in a year
Yeah, it might have taken
because
longer.
I had I had 1 year of Corn Ferry status left. That was like my final straw, basically. I could have easily lost my Corn Ferry status too. So truthfully, I give Sean all the credit in the world, of him helping me out. And, I, in a way, like, um, I always felt like I was good enough. I worked hard enough. I was talented enough to play with all these guys, having played with them for
Yeah.
5 years before
Well,
that.
let's remind everyone you were like a standout amateur play. Like your pedigree was incredible for a very long time.
Sure, that too. I just felt like I was good enough. I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't get my swing, or I couldn't get my body in certain positions the way that I felt like I needed to, and all that. I give Sean all the credit in the world for helping me. Uh, if I not this sounds super egotistical, but like if I were to think like I'm like a pretty good race car, I just needed some like proper direction and driving for me to, go as fast as I could. And Sean certainly gave me that direction.
Well, I mean, you do see it in a lot of other sports. If like you look at the NFL, certain quarterbacks, I'm going to point the finger at the Jets specifically, even though I'm a New Yorker. They've had a horrible track record developing young quarterbacks. Then these guys like Geno Smith and
Yeah, like Sam Darnold, like, yeah,
Darnold, yeah,
exactly.
they get the right coaching staff around them. Well, they were actually that good. And I'm
Yeah,
not trying to like
exactly.
dump it on your other coaches, but it is interesting to me. Like you look at the trajectory of certain athletes' careers and maybe they don't find that right match and like the talent isn't fulfilled completely. And I know it's a team sport, it's not apples to
Yeah.
apples,
I
but
can imagine it's even more frustrating for them because, they get traded. They don't have any say really
yeah.
in what coaching they can find. Like me, I can, because I'm a PGA Tour pro and have had success, like, most guys are very willing to work with me, which that is very lucky for
Yeah,
me
but
as well.
sometimes they're not available, like they're too busy, or let's say, oh, I'm a Corn Ferry guy, and they're like, yeah, what I'd rather work with this guy who's top 50. Like, it's not. I could make a case that I actually think it's harder for you guys because you have to build your own team, and you don't know who the right person is. Whereas other professional athletes, when they get drafted, they have this whole support system around them, and sometimes, yeah, it's not a great support system, but you have teammates and coaches who are looking out supposedly for your best interest. And you guys are kind of on an island. You're like, do I work with this coach or this one? And it's like, how long do I give them? A month, 6 months? Like, I'm on the clock here. I got to make cuts. So
No,
I
for sure.
I would
Like
argue that you guys have it harder.
it's almost like with them, they have too little options, and for us, we have too many options.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
it's like the paradox of choice. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
you could call, like, you got 10, 20 guys you could easily call for help more than that. Like, there's
and
a
I
tremendous
called most of those 20 guys, but like ironically, like Sean was one of the last phone calls that I made because
Wow, that's incredible.
I because of some of the stuff he worked on with Sean's been coaching for a long time, and
Yeah, yeah, he's a huge name.
some of the guys he coached, like Hunter Mahan, Sean O'Hare, Tiger Woods. It felt like he liked guys to be like stay on their left side or not quite stack and tilt, but more closer to that line than not. And so I had known Sean since 2013, but because of what I thought his kind of swing philosophy was, I didn't think it would mix with me until Ben on and I decided to go to dinner together one at the three at one time. Sean was working with Ben or still does, was working with him and decided to tag along. And, we're all pretty golf nerdy. So we talked about golf and golf swing. And I was like, wow, like that's like totally not what I expected you to think about the golf swing. And that's kind of when I
Mhm.
decided to go see him and, went and saw him 2 or 3 months after that dinner, and now we're here.
Crazy.
In
I mean,
terms of technical instruction, I know you mentioned a few things in your thread. One of them, I'm a big agreeer of this point. You said
it's
early
gonna be number
extension.
15. I knew it. I knew you were
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
number 15.
Well, I'm a fellow early extender, so I kind of I understand this. I think there's a time and a place to work away from it, but it's not as big a deal as people. I mean, I have so many people have lessons with me, and they're like, "I want to get rid of my early extension." I'll say, "Well, you can do it, and you can do it this way, and there are specific rules for doing it, but don't screw yourself up to just look a certain way." So you said early extension is not a big deal. It's a symptom, not the root cause of your bad shots. Trying to fix it will only make you swing worse 95% of the time. So yeah, can't go with that one.
Yeah, it's every I don't know how quickly the cycle is, but I feel like we in the golf community we come up with these golf concepts that are useful at some times and not useful to others, where there's like a key thing, like like shallowing is a thing, and and early extension is a thing, and like stack and tilt was a thing. Like they're they work for some, not necessarily for, or for sure not for all, but early extension is like once maybe a couple times a year I'll just do like even like Q&As, right? I'll do like these airport delay Q&As, and some of the questions are like it's kind of slightly on a tangent, but like I miss my short irons left. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like I
Thank you
like
for all the information.
yeah, like that's like going to like Twitter and saying like, man, like my head really hurts. Like,
I
how
was
do
just
I
about to say,
fix
I have a headache.
like
What's wrong? Yeah.
what's wrong? Like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
there's like a million different things that might potentially might make your head hurt, but yeah, that's like a sorry, so that's like a side like pet peeve of mine.
Well,
But like yeah, like
it's a symptom of what golfers, it's not to, like, this is like what makes golf so difficult. Like, we all want answers. Like, why am I doing this? Why is it going left?
yeah, and like early extension, like to me, like the way I see, kind of because I work with Sean and because we've worked so well together, like a lot of my golf thoughts now are kind of in line with what Sean kind of thinks. And, like I mentioned before, like golf being a backswing game, like I see the swing like most from what happens transition on is a reaction to like one where your golf club and where you've put yourself in on kind of the top of the backswing, but also from there, like how you like to generate speed and power from there. But everything's a reaction from the backswing and early extension. And in my opinion, it's because of like one of two things. One is the club face is too open, and you kind of that's the way you kind of one generate power, and it helps you kind of release the club because it kind of gets the forces out to the club face a little bit, so it might help you release it. Or two, like you're too steep, and so you kind of have to get away from the ball, or so you don't like chunk the hell out of it. Like both, you know, either way, like it's to me it's a cause and effect. It's an effect of where you are in your backswing. It's actually like it's like out of a bunch of different things you could do like from a bad place. Like I just don't see it as that bad of an issue. And most guys will like when trying to fix early extension, they just fix the extension part. Like they just, try and get your butt back. And usually I feel like that just makes it way worse. And they don't fix some of the other things that cause you to want to early extend. And they just try and fix the early extension part, which in general, I feel like does more harm.
It's tough because, like you say, most faults are actually a symptom of something else, especially with a better player. Anybody who's got a decent, they don't even have to be a tour player. Anybody like 15 handicap and below, almost everything they do is paired with something else. You have an open face in the backswing, they're going to have to do a lot of releasing at the bottom to try and square the face. The more releasing you do at the bottom, the more that club's going to dig early. So early extension is actually helping you. If you didn't have the early extension and you had all the other pieces in play, you just chunk everything. You wouldn't be able to connect with the ball.
Yeah,
There are
like it's
loads of
just
examples of that.
yeah, I mean, it's just all like a delicate house of cards, and just because you like take one piece out and try and throw like a better piece in, it's more likely for it to collapse than anything.
Yeah, yeah. See, so I run a Facebook group with like 200,000 golfers, and basically they post their swings on there. I say I run it, I just, my name's attached to it, but golfers post their swings. They don't give any information. They don't tell you their miss is left or right, fat or thin, toe or
It's an
heel. It's just,
absolute
here's my swing.
nightmare.
And then you have 100 comments of people like, you're early extending, you need to fix early extension, or your left arm is a little bent at impact, straighten that left arm. And I look at it and go, oh, I hope he doesn't apply that advice, because he's doing that for a reason. If he tries to straighten that left arm, it's just like Shanksville.
Yeah, golf, especially like when I play with like a bunch of AMs, and it to me, like I see it the most in putting, where like during a pro am, I give reads to my playing or to the amateurs, and I to be honest, I do it like kind of nonchalantly. I was like, oh yeah, it's a cup outside left, and they'll like once maybe 8 rounds of amateurs will actually aim like a cup left and hit it a cup left. And most of the time it's like, yeah, it's a cup left, and they'll be aiming like 2 cups left and hit it on 2 cups left,
It's
or
because when
or
you think about it, I'm
even
thinking
pull it
of
even
it's because
more.
of that tweet. Do you
Or it's
remember,
just like,
Mike? Do you remember that whole debacle on Twitter with the what is a cup left, inside right? I'm not going to name
okay,
the instructor.
that's a whole
I
nother
was just
thing.
laughing.
It's a whole nother
I
thing. But
could
like
not
I
bring
give
that
them a
up.
point to aim at, and let's say like, an AM aims it more left than I have it, and he hits the putt, and he's like, oh, I pulled it. Like no, like you didn't even, like amateurs have such a hard time diagnosing what actually went wrong in and it's just easier to see in putting, because like I literally just tell them where to aim, and they don't even come close to either aiming at that spot or you know pushing or pulling it, and they come up with their own reason of why they missed it. Sometimes like my favorite tongue-in-cheek is when I tell them like, oh yeah, it breaks about a cup, and they're like, really, like that much? And they aim it like 3 cups left, and then they pull it, and they're like, "See," and they miss it way left. And they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh," and
yeah.
kind of give me a look like, "I knew it wasn't going to break that much," or stuff like that.
I see that a lot, yeah, because most people underread putts, I would say, and then when they jump in, their unconscious kicks in, and they say, "Oh, this is a cup left." They stand in there, they play 3 cups, and it was actually still 4 cups. So when
It's
you tell them the
crazy
right
how the
line,
brain
yeah,
like figures it out. Like, alignment has become a really big thing for me. Like I have a tendency to aim more and more right. And then I kind of come over it to adjust for that. And so like your brain kind of, even though you think you're aiming straight, you're aiming a little too far right, but the brain already knows you're aimed too far right, just not, consciously. So it's a stupid game we've decided to
Well,
play.
it's also one of the hardest things I think because you're around, every week you play in the pro am, and I'm sure a lot of these golfers represent like the typical golfing population. They're like not playing or practicing nearly as much as they can because they're busy with life. And you are a well tuned machine. Every week you are working on ball position and alignment and dialing these things in and your reads. And it's just like second nature to you. And for someone else, it's like, they never even stop to like think about diagnosing, was it a bad read or was my putter face closed? And like doing that exercise and that work, it's time and also knowledge. And, we're trying to get that out on this show, but it's just difficult because the playing skills is what I'm getting to is like the playing skills, like you need to be on the golf course enough. You need to be paying attention enough and absorbing this feedback and then going back to the putting green and making the adjustments. Like this is why golf is frustrating and people a lot of the times don't get better.
Yeah, accurate feedback and accurately diagnosing what went wrong is such a big deal to anything we do, right? Anything
But yeah, it's
that we
everything.
do. But in golf, that's actually way harder to diagnose and figure out.
yeah, the
Well,
amount of people who will like pull hook one left and they say I came over the top of it when it was just the club face closed down. And then with that incorrect feedback, they then try and swing more into out and they may have already been into out and then they start having low point issues. And if you don't have good feedback, you can work yourself into a hell of a mess.
Well, what's interesting to me is like even at your level, basic things like ball position can start drifting throughout the season, and you might not even realize it until it's too late. All of a sudden, like 3 months later, you're like, oh my god, like I have it so far up in my stance. In my I've had this conversation. It's like, yeah, my ball position just got out of whack, and you would think like, how is that possible? And it's just like every week it just moves like quarter of an inch, and then and then you're like, oh wow, this is a problem, and
Yeah,
something that basic.
yeah, you spend a couple weeks playing like the Scottish Open and the British Open,
Yeah,
and
and putting it back in
and
your
you just
stance.
naturally like I like getting to my right side a lot. Like I like a big turn, and when it's like windy, I tend to kind of stay centered way more. After 2 or 3 weeks of that, like I come back to the States, and like one of the first things I do is just to try and make sure that I get a good full weight transfer, because just things like that, the environment that you've been playing in, has an effect on how you hit a golf shot.
And then someone, I was just gonna like create a scenario for someone listening to the show. It's like you haven't played in 2 months and you show up on your buddy's trip and you feel out of whack and you're getting angry, you're not playing well. It's like I just want people to understand like the lengths that you have to go through week to week to recalibrate. And everyone else, again, who doesn't have the time or the resources to do this, like, yeah, that is the reason why you show up one day and like you just don't know what you're doing at all, like relative to your skill level. It's hard to quantify like the time and effort and again the feedback required. And I think that's like the expectation management gap that drives people nuts. It just drives them absolutely nuts. One other thing I wanted to cover in this part of the thread, which I liked, was number 12. You said practice working it both ways. If you struggle with one, your swing is on that side too much.
I knew
Can you
you guys would like
elaborate?
that one. Yeah, I knew you guys
I
would
think
like
you
that one.
know us well
Yeah.
enough. So we're like moths to a flame here.
Yeah, that mostly honestly came more from the fact that I see way too many amps slice it, and as a drawer, I just prefer. I just think it's the at least for like it's one thing when pros like hit nice fades. It's another when like amateurs hit big slices, and it just Like, I would think as an AM, there are certain advantages to kind of a inside with the draw path. Like, you're gonna hit it more solid. The ball's gonna go a little further. You're probably going to use the body a bit better, probably. And so, I think there's like studies that like the higher the handicap, usually the bigger the slice. And I just would like would want people to, if you're slicing it, like, well, can you hit a draw? Like, you don't have to play a draw, but can you? Like, if you can't, like, if a guy's slicing it a ton, like if he goes to range, you try and draw it, like it's probably just going to start right and slice even more. That probably shows you that you're too far on one side. And you can play a fade, obviously, but like I would hope that like you at least have the ability to draw it, not only in case you're in trouble like in the trees and you want to be able to draw it around the tree, or whatever trouble, but I think it's just a easy way to keep your swing somewhat centered and not so leaning in one direction.
Yeah, I call it the golden rule of take the fault and feel the opposite. And I think if you just use that golden rule, you'll eventually get towards neutral. I know Scott Fawcett's probably listening to this, screaming at the screen or
No,
screaming
he's
at the
not.
screen.
He's
He
definitely not.
doesn't
You
listen.
always
All
you
right.
always say that. He's
All
he's
right.
definitely not
Scott, we
listening.
love you. Anyway, that's why I'm
Yeah.
bringing up.
There's
That's
no
why I'm
chance
bringing
he's
up point
listening.
number 8, because you also said 90% of the time hit your favorite shot, which we're also in agreement of. So, it's fun in training to learn how to hit or get these different reference points, or take the fault that you have and feel some of the opposites, so you get that more neutral ground. But again, most of the time, whatever your favorite shot is, if it's a draw, like like to hit a draw, then do that 90% of your time. I'll probably even say it's higher than that. But interestingly, there's situations that you do try and shape it differently, say going into a green, or is most of your shots a stock shot? And if you do shape it differently, what are the reasons, or what would be the trigger for you to do that?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I kind of think about it that, to kind of go a bit into detail of my point of my tweet, was like, just from a pure, like, Scott, obviously you guys mentioned Scott, like from a purely numbers perspective, like let's say my average proximity with the draw on this shot is 20 feet, and my average proximity with the fade on any given shot is 25 feet. Like, why would you ever pick the 25
Because the pin's
shot?
on the
Like,
back right. Because the pin's on the back
that's
right.
that's even for pros, that's like debatable. For AMs, it's just like complete
But
nonsense that you're
Jack
trying to
Nicklaus said
do
that.
that.
It's
But
in Golf My Way.
yeah, but to answer your second question, like, usually has to be like pretty windy for me to really want to fade it. If I'm at, and it also has to be really firm for me to want to fade it. If it's soft, the difference between a fade and a draw landing in the same exact spot, like, there's going to be a very minimal difference. But at like the British Open, when it's firm and the ball actually continues to bounce towards the direction that it's curved, then it can possibly make a decent difference. And this year, the last couple, at least the last British Open, no matter what the wind was, I tried to just stick with my draw, and it just realized, like, if it's blowing 15, 20 miles per hour off the right, like, you have to land it so far on the perfect right edge of the green for me to even like hold the green almost sometimes. So try to work it a bit more. And I think that's part of the reason why Bryson has had a little bit of trouble. I know he played well the last few rounds, but at the Open Championship this year. But Bryson likes working that tight draw every time, and it's just, I find it pretty difficult, and I think he found it a little bit difficult too. Like, if it's off the right, you a decent bit, you draw it. Like, you have to, one, aim so far right that you're almost uncomfortable. You're not used to aiming that far right, and because of it's firm, like, you have to land it in a perfect spot. Otherwise, it's just going so far left. So those are the only cases really that I will work a fade.
Do you ever do
Um,
it to adjust distance at all? You know, if you're trying to bust a wedge there and you're like, I need to get a little bit more out of this, I'm going to try and pull hook it a little bit more, or
so I generally don't. I like taking distances off just by taking it like smoother or shorter. Um, I like Colin Morikawa, complete opposite of me, like hits a fade all the time. And if he wants to take yards off, he just plays a bigger fade. So that'd be kind of in line with what you were talking about. He controls distance by that way. But for me, I find contact a bit more of an issue, and whenever I try to fade it, so it just creates a bit too much of a discrepancy for me. And when I do like try and take little bit of yardage off, it generally doesn't draw nearly as much anyway. It tends to be a little straighter, so that's kind of another way for me to make sure it doesn't draw too much.
So, but most of the time, and statistically, you're one of the best iron players in the world. So most of the time, you're just playing your stock shot to like a just a good target on the green, nothing crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like for me, like let's say like it's a back right pin. Like for me, most people are like, oh, you should want to fade it into that back right pin. But for me, like with a wedge, like I feel like I can still attack that pin if I'm feeling good with the wedge, with the draw, no matter what. And once you kind of, let's say, it's not a wedge, let's say it's like a 5 iron.
Let's
Well,
set,
with a
yeah, let's
five
say it's
iron,
six. Yeah, yeah. You got more
or like
curvature on it.
whatever, like, but with like a 5 iron, like at that point, like you're just trying to hit it within like a 40-foot circle on a green and you're gaining
Yeah.
strokes that way. So like
Yep.
the pin to me is a little less relevant in that situation, and that's kind of how I've thought about it when it's working the ball, trying to
so
fade it to like a back right pin.
so links to your point number 30, aggressive off the tee, but aim for the middle of the green on approach shots. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're big proponents of that as well.
yeah, I think that's just totally like strokes gained. Like working with my stats guy Austin, who I've had for a while, like be amazed at like just when if it's a par three, it's like I think we talked about like once you get to like a 7 iron, even for pros, like par, you're gaining strokes,
Yeah,
right? So it's
yeah.
just like, so, well, if you, from that, at that point, like, you're just trying to hit the green at that point. Um, and that to me, like, especially as a kid, like a 7 iron, I was like, oh, I'm just going at every single pin with a 7 iron, like from the fairway. And, um, strokes gained wise, it's just, pure math tells us that, just hitting the green is plenty good.
Huge lesson. I'm glad a tour player, a very good tour player, is telling people this because we can say it all day, but we're mere barely plus figure handicap. So for a tour player to say it, it's good. So if you're 15 handicap listening, you're a good golfer, but you're not better than a tour player. So middle of the green is a good enough strategy.
All right, before we let you go, um, we have a couple of Twitter related questions. So you recently you recently crossed 200,000 followers, and you're the only I think you picked up the torch that Homa kind of dropped because for a while he was kind of like doing his swing roasting. He was probably the only active PJ Tour player on Twitter, and he just stopped for various reasons. You picked up that torch, and I love this stuff that you share. I think people are like dying for this information. I understand why other tour players don't want to do it, but I wish more would just share insights on game improvement, or like you talk about just the basics of travel and all these things. So I actually I don't tweet as much as I used to. I'm kind of getting burnt out. But
Yeah, you're a
what's your
YouTuber now.
I'm a YouTuber now. Yeah, that's my goal in life. But I mean, I've been on Twitter a lot longer than you have. It's been like 11 years for me. So I'm getting a little burnt out. But now that you've been doing this for a couple of years, one of the questions was, do you get flack from other tour pros from sharing too much? What's the like your overall like impressions of like growing this big following and being very honest and straightforward. I'm thinking of the one time, remember the live bots? You responded to one of my tweets.
I still enjoy a little too much just like
Yeah.
poking
Yeah, you poked
those
the bear and
that bear.
you got smoked.
But, like from the tour guys, it's actually like they'll like needle me like about like just like, oh, you're like the Twitter guy now kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And or like as a joke, like that's not meant for Twitter, Michael, or something like that. If it's just like a random like comment or like a funny story. And I tried to, especially over the last few months, I've tried to make sure like, even if I'm poking fun at like the live guys, it's like, all right, would I be comfortable saying this to their face?
Yeah, which I think is
Even
an
if it
amazing litmus test because most people on social media do not consider that whatsoever.
Yeah, even like, like I actually do know these guys. Like, they're even if they're a live, they like work coworkers and if I poke it a little bit, like I'm sure someone like is going to like show them that. And so like I never want to be in like a space where I'm apologizing for anything or if they're ever like uncomfortable that I said something to them. So like that's kind of been my litmus test. But, for the most part, kind of going back to that question, like most guys have even said, or like, especially like even some caddies have said, like, yeah, I actually enjoy like your tweets. And that's kind of in my mind, like, why are you reading my tweets? Like, you're literally living it with me. Like, you don't need to know anything. Like, you obviously know anything that I would be posting.
There's a lot more tour players scrolling around than anyone would think.
For sure, for sure. And like a funny story. So at Hilton Head earlier this year, I guess you can look it up the full story, but like someone left their underwear in a porta potty on one of the holes, and
Yeah.
I when it's potentially like a little embarrassing, I try to leave it as vague as possible,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
I still want to share because it's like a funny story. It's like a funny harmless story.
Hell yeah, it's hilarious.
And so I left out the brand of the underwear, but I commented that it was a brand that like is sponsoring some pros or whatever. Obviously didn't list the pro
It's definitely 2
and
under.
not 200. But
Damn it.
but like Aaron Fleener caddies for JT Poston is sponsored by an underwear company. And I guess he like his friends he said he got a ton of text messages with a screenshot of my tweet like, was this you, was this you?
Yeah.
And so I actually kind of felt bad about that one because we at the end of the day we couldn't figure out who it was, whose underwear it was. I mean, it could have been just like a volunteer that did it. But that's when I realized I was like, oh man, like as corny as it sounds, like like my stuff like gets around and sometimes it could have like at least at the worst like an annoying effect on certain
Well,
guys.
yeah,
So
you
I
don't
try
think
to keep
about
it
it.
in mind.
Yeah, because you're like sitting on your phone and it's just like, oh, I'm just writing this thing on my phone. And then all of a sudden 5 million people read these things sometimes. And it could get out of control really quickly. It's kind of scary. But I mean, my reading your messages for the last couple of years, like it's mostly positive. It's mostly in a place where you're trying to share insights and you're not like being negative or controversial. A lot of people's strategy online is to be controversial now. So, yeah, I understand why a lot of players don't do it, but it'd be nice to get some more players who are just kind of honest because yeah, people want to know like what's going on. Like for someone who plays golf for a living, it's kind of just interesting to hear.
This is one I want to ask you before we finish up. If you got 5 minutes, you said make practice interesting and tough. How do you do that? Especially as a tall player, how do you make it tough? Because the game is next level tough for you. So how
Uh,
on earth do you make your practice that way?
those are that's one of those things where it's easier said than done, especially for me. Like I'm out there every single day. Like it's so easy for me to get caught up in like the monotonous routine of like I just go to the I just go to the range, I bang a few balls, I go to the chipping green, I hit a few chips, and um, that one is honestly as much for me as much as anyone else. Especially as an am, like that block practice can actually is fine to do, and you'll probably improve fine. But for a guy like me, like that have done just countless hours of block practice, it's like not nearly as useful as it is for AMs. And so, like I've tried to make games or drills as much as I can. And usually they don't stick as much as I would like them to, mainly just because I get lazy and I don't do it. But like one of the, I mean, like I'm out there like every single day
I'm
for
sure it
hours.
does get boring.
It
Yeah,
just gets,
it must get. I couldn't do it. I actually don't love practicing like for hours. I get bored after like 30 minutes. I don't think I
it's
could do what
just,
you do. It's too
it's
much.
boring. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm doing the same thing.
Like you're playing golf every day.
Yeah. So it's like, some of it, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
that I get to do this as a job, but like it's still a job. And but like like I'll pick out a fairway in the distance, and that's my fairway, and I'll hit shots where there's trouble on the left, there's trouble on the right, and just kind of alternate, and then so I'll hit the first one, trouble on the left. I'll hit the second one, trouble on the right. Third one, trouble on both sides. And, out of 10, I try to get at least 7 in the fairway. And like, let's say I designate the right as trouble on the right, but left is okay. If I miss it into the side where there's trouble, then that's -1. But if I miss it on the side that there's no trouble, it's 0. So like, just games like this for like putting, like stack putting has been pretty useful for me, just to have a little bit of consequence between each shot when practicing is great. I'm a member at a golf course where there's plenty of tour pros, so just trying to get, games here and there with them is really nice. But especially for me, like anytime my mind is active and there's maybe not forced, but I'm really trying to get a certain thing done is I think really the only time where I'm actually getting good practice in, other than like, well, if I'm doing like speed training, like that doesn't require too much focus. Yeah, that's probably that advice is even more towards me than it is for AMs.
Love it. All right. We can let you loose on that. We've kept you long enough. You going to you're playing Wentworth, right?
Yep, leaving this Sunday.
That's awesome. That's a
Yeah,
nice
real
feather in the cap getting to go.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All the guys that have played it talk really highly of it. I can take advantage of the fall or the regular season that I had and play certain tournaments that I might not have the luxury if I'm fighting to keep my card. I'm definitely in Napa. So yeah, I'm
Good
really
for you.
looking forward
That's
to it.
awesome. Well,
Yeah,
listen,
very
we're
much.
really happy for you. Love seeing the trajectory of everything. Appreciate your honesty, talking about your nerves and all this stuff. I just think it's very helpful to peel back this curtain for someone as good as you, just to know that like things aren't perfect and you're dealing with, indecision and anxieties just like everyone else. Obviously your talent and your skill set you apart, but it's still not so easy. So yeah, wishing you the best with the rest of the fall and next year, and hopefully we'll have you back on at another point and we'll check in and see what you've done at that point.
Sounds good.
All right. Well,
Pleasure to have you
best of
on.
luck.
Great combo.
Yeah. Thanks everyone who made it this far. We'll see you next time with a new episode.
Thanks for having me.